and
Did it.
seeing wise. So we're good to go.
Yes.
Wonder if I'm safe to close unnecessary stuff out. Maybe not. Don't have that confidence yet. Anyway, at least there's you and me and Robert's
Uh-huh.
name.
Mhm. And I'm going to have breakfast.
Sure, sure. Oh boy.
Mm.
Oh. So are we waiting for ourselves or what are we waiting for? Or are we waiting?
Well, here comes Carl.
Okay.
There he is.
There he is.
Hello. Sorry I'm late, but
Oh, it's all right. It's been a challenge this morning.
well, I have to say I'm sorry that this is for our work, Catherine, but I was on a call with a friend who I've not talked to in a long time who works. She's the comms director for the LA chapter, LA, well now California USGBC,
Mm.
and she wants me to do. She suggested I should make um prepare submit a topic you know with village homes at the center, shocking for the green building whatever show
Very
in
good.
so it's
And did you see my email?
yes, I mean the email or a text about your meeting with people yesterday.
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway we can talk about that this afternoon, catch up, but um is the last note. It's the idea of the small water cycle was new to her.
Yep. And to everybody.
So what are we about this morning? How do we want to begin our resonant connectivity so that somehow somehow this is blessed.
Well, let's check in first.
Okay.
So when did you start?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do is check in with where I am, which is a very good question because I don't know. Um, my computer screen is unusual at this point, and I don't know what to do except read what's on my wall here. And I'll just read one paragraph. I am persuaded by my life's experiences, that I am made in the image of God, the designing intelligence of the universe, the great creating process, the animating universal presence. I have tracked my shift in consciousness along the evolutionary continuum of my life's journey from survival instinct to creative impulse. I am a co-creator with the divine life force. That's enough of that, but that's that.
That's good.
Is is that something you've written?
Yeah. And if I may skip something and read, because I wrote all this and this is about Jesus in Israel in 1982. I sat in his tomb of resurrection. I stood outside the entrance of the home of Lazarus, Mary, and Martha. I've looked onto the hill of Golgotha, over the bus station in Jerusalem, I remember what that looks like. I swam in the water on which he walked. I have felt the agony, the pain, the grief of man's inhumanity to man, disrespect for nature, and disregard of God. I have risen with Jesus from heavy burdens and impossible situations. And I could, but that's enough. But thank you for letting me share that. I'm not sure how that helps us orient.
That is your check-in. That is perfect.
What?
I said it's your check-in, so it's perfect.
That's my check-in, right? Okay.
Well, it's hard orienting to a new place of being.
Yeah,
So
it
it's
is
good you were doing that.
good.
So I can sort of check in. Today I've been immersed in some interesting thoughts, thoughts of forgiveness and apology, and how those free us to move forward, and how that's a cultural issue, not just a personal issue. And listening to a lady named Kim Wright, and she's a lawyer, and she's been working to redefine contracts so that they promote relationship instead of are protective. And so there's a whole thing about law, and it's called integrative law, that is looking to be healing as opposed to preventing people from being accountable, which is what our current law system does. You're not supposed to apologize. You're not supposed to take ownership of your behavior. You're supposed to figure out how you're not culpable for it. And that is part of the brokenness of our current system. So the whole idea of being in relationship, which is what both forgiveness and apology bring us back to, is how we're connected to the people that we have harmed or that have harmed us in a way that is that brings back the humanity in each of us, is really worth pondering. So that's where I am this morning.
I appreciate that. I would call that a deep dive.
So Carl.
When when Anna was reading her writing a poem, if it's a poem, this idea of my
It's hard for me to understand.
oh, I'm sorry. I was kind of mumbling a bit. So my spiritual world as a kid, as a child, it was what I call Catholic light. So there wasn't a lot of contemplating these questions like you're contemplating, you're writing about. Um, um, but but the idea of this a spiritual world is from a place in Turkey, which it makes me think about faith, because it was a church, and it was a church hidden in a cave, and it was hidden in a cave because it was built in the Roman time. So I think about it often, but so it really speaks about the importance of faith, the need for faith, But on a personal level, and this is it is an excuse, but is that my parents were there was so little stress in my childhood. Like there was, I grew up in a really stable environment that didn't that seems that I think is um um diminished the need for deeper thinking about human being because there was so little strife. Um, and maybe but maybe another part of that was parents who didn't articulate these. They didn't articulate these ideas, but they lived good values. And I'm starting to appreciate more and more the what a privilege it was to grow up in a a place, a family that lived certain values.
A family that lives their values. Is that
Lived values of kindness and fairness and
okay? I'm just wanting to spend our time purposefully and somehow enlightening ourselves as human beings together. Not so
Well,
much.
what Carl's,
okay. So I'm sorry. We and I don't communicate. So perhaps I should just bow out and because I'm not.
no, no,
We
no,
don't
no,
talk the
no,
same language,
no,
and I'm
Don't
sorry.
bow out,
no, no,
please.
no, no.
It's it's
What I wanted to say though, Carl, about what you said is that what you bring up for me is the need for strife and its connection to faith and how that the being uncomfortable or in pain or in danger in some kind of way tends to bring forth that need to reach out beyond ourselves to whatever we think is greater. Um, and I'm going to segue that into our current political situation, that part of the turmoil that's being created is potentially a way to bring people together to really feel supported by each other and to clarify for themselves the kind of values that they really want to go forward in. And I think that's sort of the silver lining of all of this, that when you can see how horrible it is. I mean, the plane crash and the helicopter. So we have a catastrophe which 27 plus people died,
Mm.
and there's no official mention of condolences, of being sad about that situation, of supporting the families through this, none of that. It is, oh my God, see, this is what happens when you bring in people of color and don't pay attention to their real ability to do stuff. You're just hiring people because of their color. And that's the reason for this catastrophe. And that is hilarious, actually, because it is so far outside of reality. And there's so the dynamics around that, the fear of the laughter, because you're going to take it wrong, when it really creates a separation from that situation that I feel is very important. Because when we take such ridiculous things as seriously, as important, as real, we give them value that they really don't have. And that should be, that situation should be, in my view, a chance to in a way, mock the administration for not understanding the appropriateness of it, to put them on pause for that so that they see the impact of what they're doing, as opposed to saying, oh my God, he's blaming people. Isn't that horrible? And you poor people, you're really okay, which gives credence to all of that stuff, gives importance to all of that stuff.
I'm
And I think
sorry,
that
give importance to the Trump's, I don't know, ridiculous explanation.
the fallacy of the logic. I
Yeah.
mean, for God's sake, a plane and a helicopter colliding together has way more to do than that. We don't have enough air controllers. They don't have enough people. That situation was weird. Those may be way more important than anything else that could possibly happen. He is deflecting our attention from what could actually be a place of change to something that has absolutely nothing to do with it. And if we allow that to happen, then we become puppets of that whole, that it creates this whole weird reality that you've got to relate to that doesn't have any substance in the world. And I think that's the challenge for us to really be clear about who we are and what's real in the world, and to treat those things as they are, not to get caught in this desire to pretend, which is what the whole administration is all about. We're going to pretend this, we're going to pretend that, and you just let us go on. And you can just say, you guys can pretend, but I don't have to be part of that. I don't have to buy into that. I can watch you and say, I can't believe that's going to happen. And what the real issue is, and just, you don't have to get caught in it. And I think that's the muscle we're going to have to develop in the next 4 years, that we're really clear about what is important and real, and not feel like we have to be nice, perpetuate any of that kind of stuff has to just disappear, because it all creates a false theater that we're performing in. Anyway, that's the horribleness is really indicative of how outside of reality they are functioning. And just to acknowledge that, not feel like you have to change it or do anything else about it, but just say, that is not real and we ain't going there. Yeah.
What comes to me as you speak so intelligently about this is, I just look at us here, we four, because this is what we have. This is what we are. And we're being authentic. We're being honest. We're being personal. We're not trying to analyze something. We're not, I mean, I just appreciate, I don't know, the simple, raw, basic human connectivity from heart and open mind. And it's like, that's a starting place. I don't know any other starting place for anything that we can do as a species, but evolve ourselves in authenticity like we're, trying to do now. Does that make any sense?
And I think recognizing that in others is really important. And sometimes that gets mixed up with style that we're uncomfortable with. And we feel uncomfortable with the style in it. And so we label it in our minds as not important, not real, not authentic in some kind of way, because it's not what we would do. And that makes the other person feel othered, feel diminished in some kind of way. So that's why I'm hoping Carl will stay and participate.
Yes, you're important, Carl, because we all need to grow. And I need to grow with you.
Mm. Well, that's that's nice to hear, because the way I hear often things you say is, I'm right and you're wrong, and what you're saying does not fit into my Jesus-centered world. and therefore it's not true. It's not right.
Yeah, well
And
put.
it's and I mean, to be, if we're being authentic, so I mean, your words are beautiful and heartfelt, but there are those. I guess I'm in this group, in this category of people who, yes, it's so important to get and to understand and be part of, to be human and to do best, to do better, and all that, but leave the God stuff out because that's caused so much pain and suffering and killing in the world. So yes, yes to all of it except for no to Jesus, no to God, or the way we make God to be. And so, as beautiful as what you said is, it's sort of heartfelt, and I agree with the principles. This idea that it's got to be about Jesus turns people off.
Sure.
Because Jesus has been good. There's been many times I've written in response to people, the the Christian right nationalists in America are doing what Christians have been doing for centuries. They're taking Jesus and using those ideas to other people and to a justification for killing people.
Yep.
And so when you start talking about Jesus, that needs to be part of part of the conversation.
So can I also say something to this? There is, because what you've said is correct. Certainly the Christian nationalists are bastardizing the understanding of Jesus. And the persona of Jesus, the person who existed at one point in time and did something that was so meaningful to our species that we've kept that story alive for 2,000 years, is not the same persona that has been twisted into what is being touted through Christian nationalism and other places. The contortions that made the doctrine of, anybody help me here? There's a doctrine that came out of the Catholic Church in the 1400s, doctrine of discovery, that came out of the Catholic Church in the 1400s, that said that if you're Christian, you have the right to go into any country and claim it for us civilized Christian folks. And therefore, whatever you do is fine because you're doing it in that context. And Pope Francis came very close to apologizing for that, but he didn't. He was asked directly by a cadre of indigenous folks to please rescind this, and he didn't. He came close. He listened to them. He talked about it. He said it was bad, but he didn't rescind it. He didn't really apologize for it. He didn't take it back. And the way I interpret all this stuff and the filter that I use to go through conversations like this is, when we bring up domination, the power over, then we're playing to all of that stuff. And when we're talking about Jesus as the Savior, as the one who can make you okay, as all of that kind of stuff, it's still a power over. It's like Jesus has power over you in some kind of way. It is not really empowering you to come forward to be like him, which is a different way of holding the very same stuff. Because there is something about that person that is memorable, that is incredibly life-giving, that is incredibly supportive. But it's been so colored with everybody else's crap that you have to get through all that to be able to see it. And I also think there's something very precious about us as individuals who honor that ability to see that preciousness is resonating inside, because we have the capacity in ourselves to see it, that means that it resides here too. It's not just about the external. It's that connection between us and that external. And that's truly a precious point. So I'm very cautious about judging the way people hold anything that has incredible meaning for them, and that usually has spiritual ties in some kind of way. But also being cautious about the subtle corruption that domination has had in religion of every kind. Every kind. There is no religion that hasn't grasped that domination thing and then put it on somebody else or themselves. The whole flagellation thing. I mean, it's just it's just incredible. So for me, it's the domination piece that we have to watch for and be sensitive to, listen to, and notice when it shows up. Because when it shows up, that's a flag that we're in the separation place. We're not speaking from connection at all. That's what domination is all about. It's creating a difference between the person dominating and the other, whatever that is, whoever that is. So it just is such a subtle, and it gives you a feeling of power, of control, all those wonderful things, you know. So it's so seductive. It's so easy to get into for that reason. And we all do it in our own little ways. I mean, I don't think there's anybody that escapes that. I certainly don't. There's, you know, you give me the right situation, I can come on just as strong as anybody else. And yet it's not really where humanity lies. Our humanity lies in that connection, and that's a whole different ambiance. It's a whole different ambiance. I mean, that's what I've learned from my values work, is that you can get to the same place by many different paths. And some paths are much easier than others. So trying to be safe gets you so far, but there's the agency that you need is not there in safety. It's about somebody else taking care of you in some kind of way. And that's just not, it doesn't develop your own soul in a certain way. And so it feels good. It's nice to be taken care of. You like that feeling. You know that somebody cares for you. Those are all important things. But when it becomes the purpose, it becomes corrupting. And being effective is a second value set. Absolutely. We want to be effective. We want to have agency. We want to know we can do something. We want to see the results of our actions in the world. Fantastic. And when that's all there is, when it's all about you, that has certain limitations. Yeah. You know, it begins to corrupt the development that you have, because we aren't separate. We come together in community. We are all part of the same thing. We're all part of the same totality. And if we don't open ourselves to that piece, which may mean we don't ourselves be effective as we understand it, because it has to be changed to be inclusive in some sort of way, and it takes it out of your agency, out of what you've done, then our cells don't grow. And to have that growth include everything is really where the power, agency, beauty, and humanity lie. And I think that's what we're moving to. That's kind of this underlying new thing that's being developed. And we don't know what it looks like. We haven't had practice in it. We don't have muscle there. We have all these systems that tell us that doesn't work and that prevent us from doing it in different ways. So it's really a very interesting time to begin to sort of sift through with our own discernment and to really trust what makes us work. And here comes Mark.
Mark?
I'd love to hear Robert now.
Who's Mark?
Mark
Is there a
Cornell.
Mark?
I'm Mark.
He's actually from GRC also. Hey, Mark.
Good morning and afternoon.
So we are just checking in. And Mark, I don't know if you know Carl.
I bet Mark,
Yeah, I thought you might, but just in case. So Robert,
Yeah, it's quite a conversation to walk into. I, you know, the comment that best caught my attention was there are limitations, inherent limitations, when a person is operating from the consciousness that it's all about himself. And that's being totally represented by our president and many of the people that he seems to have surrounded himself with. And it's been shown not to work for all the reasons you were just outlining, Catherine. Historically, people who are out to get power and money and every other substance of wonderful attainment, they do it for themselves. And what I'm noticing is that when humanity seems to be on the verge of annihilating itself, it would seem to me there's one thing that we've never tried, which is to work from a unified, a sense of unity within humanity, a sense that we are all consciousnesses that are part of a larger consciousness. People have different ways of describing this. They say, that, God is the sum total of all consciousness, in the universe, and the earth has a consciousness of its own, and mankind, people delineate these thoughts in many different ways. But what I'm getting at is that if we were to share a consciousness of values that was similar throughout the world, the same, perhaps, the human unity conferences used to talk about in this way, that and the Values Caucus, United Nations, these are two things that I was participating in for over many years, decades, start to realize that there are some basic values that might just work if they were shared amongst all people. The willingness to sit down and hear the other side, the other person. That's the power that I see in such belief, such a consciousness, is it allows for that kind of interchange among people to happen. In fact, that it would be expected. And to me, that's the only way out of this current predicament. It's any group, doesn't have to be a religion. It can be a political party. It can be, a cult that follows, well, some say the cult of how's the best way to word this? All kinds of cults are showing up around, the new technologies, AI.
The cult of AI, I like that.
That's going to save humanity. People really start believing these things, and they start rejecting and discarding other arguments that are totally valid.
I just wanted to, I love what you're saying. We reject for me, if the more you put into the technology cult or whatever, the more we reject our humanity. So
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. There seems to be that pattern going on. People are willing to unleash AI and all of its power, onto humanity, and the hell with what the repercussions might be. Or Bitcoin, same thing. The hell with it. We won't have individual currencies anymore, or national sovereignty expressed through a singular currency. No, we'll have Bitcoin, and Oh, well, don't get me started. Don't get me started about all the power usage of these things that people seem to be ignoring. Anyway, it's the point that human beings right now do seem to be geared up to worship something, whether we
Mhm.
typically think, well, that's reserved to religion, but no, it's not. Or you could
Yeah.
say that all these other things are religion,
Mhm.
but in a different form. So that's what I've been working on for years, is just first imagining what this unified humanity might be, and the energies that might operate and be enhanced by more and more people being open to this frame of consciousness. Um, and then how do I do it myself? Now, just an aside, to go back to earlier in the conversation, I happen to believe that that's actually what Jesus, the man, was up to. He had no intention of starting a religion. So that's where my belief starts. But I do read some of the propositions that he posed to humanity, which with great interest, because there's something there. And there have been many others, from Buddha to Lao Tzu, and then more
Thich Nhat Hanh.
current ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
And those are seemingly, they're not, Thich Nhat Hanh is not a religious leader, I would not say.
Right.
He's a spiritual leader. I mean, you could say Leonardo da Vinci as being one of these great ones. We could, point to all kinds of different people who are sort of out of their time because they're expressing a type of imagination and consciousness that just goes way beyond, way beyond the norm.
The it's just in that list, just the spiritual leaders is also as an example of their goal for humanity was very similar, but they said it in different ways, or maybe not in different ways.
Yeah.
If you looked, and maybe if you look deep enough, that they're saying the same thing, but
Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr.
Yeah.
I mean, there are all kinds of different ones that are recognized for being superlative within the humanity that they, or the human consciousness, and how the shared human consciousness. I mean, that's how I read all of their teachings. And that's what I choose to look for. So
One of the things that you've triggered in me, Robert, when you talked about human consciousness and coming together as an entity, what has happened for me over the last year or so is really including Earth's consciousness in that.
yes.
And if we became one with the Earth's consciousness as well, that is the first step to being way bigger than we normally are. And I'm sure there's stages beyond that as well. I have no doubt. But that's the biggest next step to take to really understand our being a part of life in a really concrete and integrative way, that we are really part of that whole thing that we call life on this planet and what that looks like, is truly a different step. It creates the safety, it creates the ability to be effective in different ways. I mean, Earth is so clever, has been. There's so much wisdom there about how to make decisions, how to come together. I mean, that's what's been learned by all this other life that has experimented with how to work with each other, and they seem to have figured it out, actually. We're kind of the outliers at this point. So being able to accept that wisdom and be integrated with it, it would be a huge step for humanity, for this particular species on the planet. Yeah. So
The-
Mark,
Go ahead.
how are you? This is all check-in, believe it or not.
Yeah, 50 minutes in and we're still checking in. It's must mean there's some good source there. Um, hmm. Today I'm a bit frenetic, had too many things going on and back to back to back. So I'm arriving with that sort of energy. Um,
Mark, it's difficult for me to hear you, to understand your words when you're talking with your hand on your chin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
mm, yeah, the last month has been, yeah, reasonably still, reasonably busy with some work. Have mostly avoided getting sucked into mainstream media threads. So if there is something that I must know, please remember to tell me because I probably don't know. Yeah, things are okay. Thank you.
Can I jump in?
Sure.
Finished? Are you finished, Mark?
Yes.
What cleans my slate is that we're all part of the same thing. That is self-generative. I mean, we're all part of the same thing. And it's all self-generative. I don't know if that can penetrate, you know, and if you can understand what I mean by that. But it's all part of the same thing, and it all starts within, and it all unfolds and mixes in with each other, and we're all part of it. And it's about being conscious of that and having an intelligent approach that doesn't, where we don't kill ourselves. I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but we're all part of the same thing. And when I say that, when I feel that, it's so good for me. It feels good to know that I am part of everything and participate in the self-generation of that. Okay, that's it.
So that brings me back to our earlier or beginning conversations actually around apology and forgiveness. And then for you, Mark, the recent, yeah, I shared, yes. The recent catastrophe with a plane collapsing with a helicopter, which happened in the Potomac, I believe.
Yes.
The response to that by the administration was, oh my God, it's all the DEI folks that were involved in that, which has created laughter in some because it's so ludicrous to even try and make that connection, and that it is deflective of really looking at the source. And from Ani's perspective, this feeling of connection, of all one, of respecting the humanity and being able to be sensitive to that Robert was talking about. Those are such wonderful places to begin to really see the dissonance and to call it out. Instead of getting hooked into, oh my God, look at what he's doing and how he's all of that kind of stuff, making him important, which is what he wants, making it ridiculous that he is so missing the mark. And really calling out the fact that that whole piece about caring about humanity, about recognizing the system problems, like there weren't enough controllers in there, the controllers were overworked, all that kind of stuff, which should have mitigated those two entities in the sky and couldn't at the time. But that whole, what that triggered for me actually was this whole narcissistic difficulty in being wrong or feeling that they're wrong. And that whole charade is a protection for that. That there's no way that that person could in any way be connected to something that is so bad. So there's kind of this backhanded recognition that it's bad. And this fear that they'll be diminished by addressing it.
Well, I'm sorry. Are you're? I think you're talking about when we overreact to the absurdity of what he's saying. So in that, so when you, I'm just asking, is that what you're talking about? So that empowers the absurdity or the even evilness.
Well, and a little bit about why he's doing it. Because the smoke screen of blame, of pointing a finger that's so not them, means that it couldn't possibly be us, and therefore I don't have to ever feel like I did something that I shouldn't have done. It's interesting, and it's for me a place of compassion around narcissism. That whole self-protection about I cannot be wrong means there's such a preciousness to them about their self that got twisted just a little bit. They don't see that the apology, the I'm sorry I did what I did, the taking responsibility for your actions is actually enhancing that. They feel like it's a wound, and they're protecting themselves from that wound by deflecting it out. And so it's a compassion place for me. It makes me sort of understand it. It doesn't make it right or any of that. But it also means because we want to do the opposite. We want to just turn that sword around and say, no, see, it's really you. You have to bear the pain of that, instead of how do you finesse that space to give them the ability to take responsibility without feeling that they have to immediately take the pain of it as well. And they could grow into that pain as they understand more deeply, but still take responsibility. There's just got to be a way out of that hole. And I don't know what it is. I'm just speculating that, because when I worked with the minister of my church, who was exactly like Mr. T, there was absolutely no difference, and he's now in the process of trying to destroy our denomination. So there's really very little difference. And he just couldn't be wrong. So when he did something or was asked to do something, that's the other thing, you can't tell him what to do. So how do you get him to move in a way that's coherent with his understanding of himself and not doing more harm? Became the thing I was playing with. And because there's such a need to be loved, which you just see, I mean, it aches in Mr. T. It's just this big, throbbing, palpable pain that he carries everywhere. You've just got to love me, because he can't love himself. Somebody has to care. And so loyalty is his way of doing that. That's why it's so important and precious to him.
Very good.
Is being able to play with that by saying, you're so good at this. You should really, this is really something that you should that you should express more, because people really appreciate that, is a path for them to do movement. And you've got to be really careful not to tell, ask, or any of those things that would make them feel vulnerable in that space. They need to grow into that love or that feeling of appreciation that you're showing. That is a way through that, at least in some cases that I've seen. And it will be interesting, I don't know if that's ever going to happen, if there is anybody close enough to T to be able to do that effectively. I wouldn't be surprised if his wife has discovered that to some extent. It's the only thing that keeps her there. But it's just, this is a place of such powerful learning for all of us. And to notice how we are when we don't want to be wrong. What do we do when we're in that space? I know I tend to get feisty. I tend to not listen, and I have to actually go away, and then I can come back and hear. But sometimes in the moment, I can't. And I will just be really reactive, and not at all in relationship, because I'm protecting my own sense of self. And if I can hear myself do that, then I can rethink that and I can come back. And then sometimes I can even hear, oh my God, that's exactly right. But it's so contrary to how I hold myself that I actually don't remember it. I block it all out. I just will not. It's just not. And I can come back and say, would you please say that again? But you have to say it exactly right, because that was what I am. And then people interpret sometimes and it just disappears. But I need somebody to say what they see in that way, because I can't do that. I've created my own little world in a way that makes me okay, that doesn't allow that in. And that's why we're all together. Because we can see things in the other that we can't see in ourselves. And to be able to hold that space, and to acknowledge it, and to be given space to acknowledge it. Like I said, I can't do it at first. I mean, in that situation, I just buck right out. I'm just gone, because it's too big a change for what I hold, the world I've created. But I can recognize the truth of it. I can hear it knocking at the door, as it were. And I just have to come back around to that. And then I still need help, because it's still outside of me. It's still not something that I've accepted into myself. And so I still need that reflection out here to make it so that I can see it, to hold me in that place. I have a friend who was very big in one of the past life whoopses that I'm dealing with in this life. I was in a Buddhist monastery with a bunch of these other folks. And there are at least four in my life now from that. And I think there were 6 or 7 of us at that time. And we were, as a Buddhist group, looking at how to really get to the truth of people. Okay, now this is before we understood ego. And I happened to see the truth in the leader of the time. And that was so painful for him that he had me disemboweled. That was his response to.
I'm sorry for another question is so when you're the story that you're talking about, that you were in this group of people, that was in another life.
That was in another life.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
I've learned to know you enough and appreciate you that just wanted to check in on that.
Yes. Yes. This was another life. And one of those people took that lesson in this life, and worked with a bunch of mostly women who had substance abuse issues. And he created this process because we can see in other people what they can't see in themselves. where they would do interventions. I'm using that word, I don't know if that was his, where the person of focus would be held in love by everyone else and held there to listen to the truth being told, but being told how much she was loved and valued for who she was at the same time. So she had the ego support of being a valuable and good person, even though this other thing was there, that you are self-deceptive, that you hurt others, whatever the story is that the others are telling, and was able to create breakthroughs for people in that process because the love held them enough to be able to hear the rest of it. And I think that's really, really key because we can tell the truth without that love. And that's when it becomes a weapon and really decimates people in very profound ways. It's the love that allows us to hear that kind of stuff and then grow through it. So we need to be held in that way. And that's really hard on a public stage. That's very hard to do on a public stage.
I put 2 photographs of the church that I mentioned in the chat,
Yes. That is amazing.
and it's you know, I this like every day I think about this. So and this is sort of responding to you on it, you know, so living in Turkey between the ages of 6 and 8. And so I was exposed to what I think is a living history or a history of, you know, things like this without, and there was never, you know, never an overt explanation about you know, no large articulated why. Then, but clearly this is, and this is, if it needs to be said, this is probably a place where Paul of Tarsus um, spoke to preach, because it's very close to Tarsus. But this, you know, so and there's many, I think many of the things that influenced me in the way I think about humanity come from this experience in Turkey, where you know, you have you have this 7-year-old brain or mind or person, and you're exposed, you know, being exposed to this, and so for me, you know, I think the result is that, you know, that the history of humanity is something that's really really direct. It's something like so the idea of something that happened in 300 BC or AD, you know, I had these direct experience of, oh, this church in this cave is like, you know, represents that. So I was exposed to so much history that I feel a direct connection to humanity and what humans can do. You know, and then it just also in this a blessing from my parents, that I think this is also part of what we're talking about, is that that they never taught us to be afraid of the Turkish people, because, you know, and not because they're Muslims, because in 1968 there wasn't a quote Muslim problem, but it just that, you know, they were poor and different. I remember my mother talking about something about, you know, that people, you know, like I think she like give the Turkish people these empty Coke cans because they'll make something out of it, you know, because they're poor, but not because, you know, but that didn't degrade them. I mean, you know, like I just think that having 2 parents that expose us to this without instilling fear in us and instilling that we should be, you know, we should not like them. And we did things. We went camping in places that very few Americans did, you know, in 1967, 68. And there was never any fear about spending a week on the beach and, you know, in the Mediterranean in this middle of this Turkish village. I mean, it's really every day I just start to think that was such an extraordinary blessing that to not be taught to be afraid of people who are different.
And so few Americans have that experience. The Black community does. I have been awed by the courage that it takes to be Black in a white America. Just awed. I mean, it's incredible the amount of courage they have to live with every day, to go anywhere, to be anywhere. Yeah. We have come to the end of our time, actually.
Yeah.
We could continue this next week. This is a subject matter that we could look at in 1,000 different ways. I really enjoy it. This is sort of the back door into actually dealing with the natural world, is to do away with the fear that that completely has saturated our viewpoint on the world. And I think it came through the fear of nature.
It came from separation.
Yeah, separation. And that was learned by people understanding that, a saber-toothed tiger over there at the other side of the field is going to kill me if I don't, escape it. They're very real dangers. I'm amazed even now how quickly my heart starts to beat fast when a supercell thunderstorm comes over and just starts unleashing. I mean, there are all kinds of memories in there.
But part of that,
you said specific memories, or?
Well, memories in myself, but also what do they call that? Societal memories, the
like
human memories that we have been inflicted with.
but I want to say, Robert, the fear of being eaten, of dying, is really a separation issue, because everything feeds everything else.
Right.
Says the woman who's perfectly at home that she's going to come back. She's been here before.
Well, and that's part of it, though. That's part of it. I mean, one of the gifts for me of systems thinking was that if everything's connected, then what's this life connected to? It's not possible for it to be a one-off. It's just not. That's not how the way the world works. So if it's not a one-off, then what? I can't think of a better justification for reincarnation. I really can't. It just made it make, of course, it's got to be that way. But I think that, I mean, we are so imbued with, we're not going to die. You're not going to kill me. That's really a bad thing, unless we're killing somebody else. That's the only time we really justify it. So we should look at that. But every animal understands that it's food for something else, and that's a blessing. That's the way life keeps itself going, is by eating itself.
Is the idea that we are not food for something else, is that a particularly Western Christian idea compared to other faiths?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that.
The other, maybe the part of with this makes me think of the point about the machines and always relying on machines, because the overconfidence in machines to help us understand nature separates us from nature.
Yeah.
I just had a guest. My wife I let a friend come in. I think I'm going to have to leave for that.
Okay, it is time. So we will see each other next.
Carry on, but I'm going to have to go.
Bless you all.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming, Mark. It's been a long time. Nice to see you.
Yeah, I try to get in once a month, but scheduling's been tough lately.
Mark, you're in Australia, correct?
Well, I was in New Zealand at one point when we probably were interacting, but I'm now in Boston.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So I kind of I was wondering because you're talking about your day is not as over as I thought maybe it was, but you've been doing more things than I've been doing because it's still early in California.
Yeah, yeah. No, I still have a couple of hours of work.
What do
Oh,
you do in
God.
Boston?
Sorry.
What are you doing in Boston?
So professionally, the systems change and advisory, coaching and advisory work that I do, but that's mostly remote. And yeah, living with some
And
people.
yes, and the personal piece, you can't leave that out.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I'm in a co-living house here with 5 others, one of whom's my girlfriend, and yeah, working on that too.
That's the big work.
The big work's in here.
Yep, yep, yep. And we need others to make it happen. We just do.
Can't do it by ourselves for sure. But yeah, good to see you all, and see you next time.
Nice to see you, very much so.
Bye bye.
But
Bye-bye. And Carl, about 5,
yeah,
that work?
the change of the adjustment to the time, it's like just 15 minutes early. Was that something?
I don't even know what you're talking
It
about.
was.
The
It seems like our
advisory?
anyways, I just got an email that you changed the meeting time, but it was I think as our normal 4 o'clock, that thing you have in place, and it was odd
Oh,
that
yes. Yeah, don't worry about that. I
okay,
changed my calendar because it was not right.
okay.
So does 4 o'clock work better than 5?
No, 5 or 6 is fine. What did you say? 5 or
5 is what I said.
yeah,
Okay,
5.
all
Very
right.
nice to see you.
Bye.
Bye, Jan.
I'm happy I'm part of the same thing with
There you go. Yes. Oh, I love your top. I love your jacket.
mine. Oh, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's warm and soft.
Yeah.
too.
Nice. Nice.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Very good.
Okay.
Yeah. It's
Let's-
nice to see you got pictures up.
Oh, oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I got
Yeah.
big-
Pictures make it home.
They do. They're
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Bless you. We'll
Bless you
talk
too.
again soon and more.
Okay. All right. Very good.